Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Gessel, and I'm the Director of Public Programs at Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. MoAD is a contemporary art museum, and our exhibitions and programming inspire learning through the global lens of the African diaspora. As we begin all of our programs, we like to ground ourselves in the spaces we are occupying. As many of us are settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those forcibly brought to this continent, our institutions were founded upon the exclusions and erasures of the indigenous peoples on whose land we are located. MoAD occupies the unceded land of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, and we pay our respects to the Ohlone peoples and their elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. And we encourage everyone to learn more about the native lands you occupy by visiting native-land.ca, and we'll put that link in the chat as well. I welcome you tonight to our program series, African Diaspora Film Club, co-sponsored by Black Public Media, and presented with Cornelius Moore, who is a longtime director at California Newsreel, the 54-year-old social issue nonprofit film distribution and production company. He is an independent film curator specializing in works from and about the Black world. Modeled after a book club, we expect that you will have already viewed the film when you join us for this discussion, but if you haven't seen the film, please stick around. We just can't guarantee we won't have any spoilers. Today, we're excited to discuss the documentary Out of the Muck with filmmakers Ira McKinley and Bhawin Suchak. Ira McKinley is a co-director, producer, and writer of the film. He is a filmmaker and activist and the director-producer of the award-winning documentary, The Throwaways. Born in upstate New York, he is now based in South Florida, where Out of the Muck is set. Ira started his activism in the 1980s when he participated in ACT UP in Ithaca, New York. During the winters of 2007-2008, he started a homeless arts showcase in Northampton, Massachusetts, Pulaski Park, which was inspired by his 15 years being homeless himself. Ira is the recipient of the 2014 ACLU Carol S. Knox Award, 2013 MLK Storytelling and Activist Award from Siena College, 2009 Northampton Arts Council's Emerging Filmmaker Award, and was the 2009 Producer of the Year for Northampton Community Television. His current film, Out of the Muck, tells the story of his family roots in Pahokee, Florida, and is being produced with support from ITBS, Black Public Media, Just Films, Sundance, and Southern Documentary Fund. Bhawin Suchak is the co-director, producer, cinematographer, and editor for the film. He is an educator, filmmaker, and founding member and co-executive director of Youth FX, a media arts organization focused on empowering young people of color in Albany, New York, and around the world by teaching them creative and technical skills in film and digital media while supporting self-determined communities of emerging artists. Bhawin also co-directs Next Doc, a year-round fellowship program that exists to amplify the voices of documentary filmmakers of color between the ages of 20 and 24 years old. Bhawin is the co-director, producer, cinematographer, and editor of Out of the Muck. And he also previously co-directed The Throwaways with Ira McKinley and Free to Learn. We'll start the discussion today moderated by Cornelius, and we encourage everyone to participate by making comments and submitting questions through the chat or the Q&A box. And finally, please take a moment to type where you're joining us from in the chat. We love finding the diaspora in our audience. So thank you all, and I'll turn it over to you, Cornelius.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth, and welcome to Bhawin and Ira. And I saw Out of the Muck a few months ago and loved it. And so I was really looking forward to having it part of the African Diaspora Film Club and to talking to you all. So welcome. And question, my first question is, I know that you all work together on The Throwaways. What was it that brought y'all together to do this film? And curious also about how you decided who would do what on this movie. So whoever wants to answer first, go ahead.
Do you want to kick it off, Ira?
Go ahead, you tell them.
Well, yeah, so me and Ira worked on The Throwaways
from 2011 to 2014. And when we were closing that project and starting to kind of tour with it in festivals, Ira was really thinking about his family roots and where he was from in South Florida. And, he can tell you a little bit more about the more specifics about him really kind of getting down to Pahokee and meeting and reconnecting with some of his family members. But I think for me, I'll just say that I was really initially not interested in making another feature documentary at that moment because we were so busy. And as folks who are filmmakers or people who know anything about it, it takes a lot of work to make a feature documentary. And with this particular one, I think that, initially, once Ira told me what the story was about, which was retracing his roots and then talking about the power of community and history and football and how those things kind of intersect in this town. I mean, I was really drawn to it. And I think one of the things that we talked about was if we can get, our executive producer, Sam Pollard, on board again. He helped us produce the first film. And if, folks know Sam, he's kind of just a really incredible, living legend of documentary, specifically about films about the Black experience in America. And we did, and Ira really, pitched the film to Sam in a meeting, and the three of us, sat down and said, yeah, this is something that we think we can actually, produce. And we wanted to just start by going down, and Ira reconnected with his family, but I didn't know anybody there. So it was really important for me to take time to build relationships first, because to me, that's really at the core of, my practice as a filmmaker is about building relationships with the people that I work with. And so, that was kind of the process that got me kind of hooked into the project with Ira. And then, I was doing cinematography, and Ira was really the storyteller, and the writer of the film. So for me, it was me taking that kind of, step back and being the cinematographer and being able to kind of capture the imagery and having Ira be really the storyteller and kind of directing us through the different, aspects of the town and his family history. And then, we talk a little bit about it then, we kind of happened upon this incredible football season that this high school team had, where they went all the way to the state championship. And so, you couldn't have scripted it any better than that. But I don't know, Ira, if you have anything else to add to that.
Basically, what you said is, it is, but I have to let people know too, it was, when we talked about it, when I pitched it, I wasn't in Pahokee for 35 years. So it was like me going back first. So I went back first. And I did I did a scouting, and I reconnected with my family who hasn't seen me in 35 years.
Mm.
So yeah, and it was just, I did 2 weeks there when we were touring with the Throwaways, and I had a chance to go to Florida and after I did a Martin Luther King lecture series in St. Petersburg with Cornel West and Douglas Blackman, who wrote Slavery by Another Name. It gave me a chance to go and, reconnect with my family on the other side, and that's what I did, after 35 years, reconnected. And then me and Bhawin came back 7 months later. We had to raise money, through, GoFundMe and, crowdfunding to go back down there to get, just to get the basic pilot of the story. The first time we went down there during Muck Bowl season, but the Muck Bowl was being played in Belgrade. So that's how we reconnected. We went down there and we seen this, the atmosphere. And so then it took us, I think it took us another trip. We waited a whole nother year before we went back down again, almost a year. We had to raise more funds to do all this. So it was a process.
So what's the timeline of how long from the beginning when you went down, Ira, to when it was finished, and did this correspond with COVID? Because I don't recall seeing. Yeah,
it did. Okay. It took 7 years. So I came down there in 2015. 2015 when I went down there, and of course COVID came in. That set us back 2 years. So it's just a process of me. And when we were doing COVID, that's when we were doing the editing, and we couldn't find an editor. So Bhawin had to step up, and do a lot of the editing on it too, and we had it was tough because we couldn't get together. So we had to email each other and text each other, and that was like a 2-year process. I don't know, Bhawin wants to add on more to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of covers it. Yeah, the timeline was really, you know, I think it was extended by COVID, but at the end of the day, I think it was kind of, it was really good to take that time and be really intentional about how we finish the film and show it to the community members, show it to Ira's family, and then to release it on the centennial of the town, you know, so that was a really significant marker. I mean, you know, Pahokee's celebrated their centennial in 2022. And so I think it was actually, you know, for us, a perfect timing for us to kind of release the film and make sure that it was kind of in line with what folks in the community were really, you know, excited about. You know, a lot of people, when we showed people in the community, it's like they don't learn about the history and they don't learn about that in their own schools. And so that's part of, you know, what I think documentaries like Out of the Muck can do, is it can really kind of share history, but not from, you know, the sort of Western kind of like white perspective that you hear in a typical high school classroom, but from the actual perspective of the people that have lived through it and the people who are kind of continuing to tell those stories. So for me, that process was really important for us to take that time, even though it took 7 years. I think it was perfect timing at the end of it.
Well, I'm surprised to hear that to the centennial, because my feeling watching the movie was that it was, you know, certainly the town was more than 100 years, or certainly people have been there longer than that. But so the official kind of establishment of the town was 100 years. Yeah. So one of the things that really resonated for me when watching it is because, as I said in the questions I posed to you, was that it is very similar to what's happening to a lot of Black folks whose families, you know, remain in the South, but people moved up north. And that's the same thing and with my family too. I mean, people moved up north, and then people were retiring, or there's other ways of maybe even having a simpler life or quieter life. You know, not as expensive life. People going back south, and I thought that you know, the fact that this film was in many regards about that speaks to a lot of people, and I was just wanting. I know people have that similar response to mine. But Ira, you were saying that you haven't seen your family in 35 years, but was there contact, phone, writing, and everything during that time period?
No, if you know the backdrop of the throwaways, there is, and I got caught up in the system. Okay, so my father was shot and killed in '79 by a cop in Miami. So he's part of that where they did the riots. He was part of that statistic. And so by the time we went to bury him in '79, and the time I revisited in 2015, that was 35 years.
Okay.
So I was 14 when I left, and I was like 49 when I came back. You know what I'm saying? And things, you know, things that I remember when I was 14 years old, stuff didn't kick back until like we were doing some of the interviews. Like, for example, one of the interviews we was doing with my niece Bridget, and we're at the high school, the old high school, and things just came back to me when she started mentioning stuff. And it was like a deja vu moment. And I'm like, yeah, this is where I was at. And then after school, me and my nephew, which he also got shot and killed, we used to run up to the lake. And then I remember how big the town and everything was lost. I mean, everything, it was like gentrified, you know, like you see in every place else, you know what I'm saying? But the thing was that those places had natural resources. Where else could you as a kid, you might be like the people, like they say, you might not have money, but you would never go hungry because you have natural resources. You have mangoes growing in front trees, avocados. You go to that lake, go fishing, you see them catching the rabbits. You wouldn't go hungry there. You just poor. And then you had to deal with the Jim Crow system. So when you say like people going back, but they're going back into a world, especially in Florida, where they're trying to cancel everything. You see what's happening there. So that's why we think it's important for films like this, for educational wise, for people to see this is what was going on. And the reason why the people were put in the muck was because when it became a town, 1922, that's the same time that they were making Miami, West Palm, and Fort Lauderdale these tourist cities, and they didn't want the Black people living there. So they pushed them out there with the Seminoles, and that's Seminole land. So we ought to understand that that's Seminole land, but the Seminoles, and then it goes way back. So that's also where the escaped slaves used to run to.
Mhm.
They ran, and you know, Jackson came down there with Pierce, with the troops, and there was always
Andrew Jackson. Yeah, Andrew Jackson, the president. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, trying to get the escaped slaves. You know what I'm saying? So there was always Seminole Wars there, and that's where the place was at.
Mhm.
So there's more rich history that we really didn't delve into that goes back on that, you know, and that's part of the slums. You know what I'm saying? That's the Glades, that's the Everglades.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too, because you know we Black people from the South particularly always talk about our connections with Native peoples, and you lifted it up and mentioned a particular group, you know, the Seminoles. And what I'm curious, I know there's a Seminole Nation, maybe not right near the Pahokee, but other places are. What's the connection now? I'm curious to know. I know about the historical.
They go to Fort Lauderdale and that Hard Rock Casino. I think that's owned by the Seminoles. So you know, the Indians always have these casinos and stuff. So there are things. You know, the land right now, that land that we're at that you're talking about is owned by U.S. Sugar. So the Seminoles don't have that, even though they may have some money coming in because it was their land. They don't own that land now. That's where 90% of your sugar comes from in that area there, the muck. So what you see is they call that train, they call that the money train because they know it's a $1 billion industry. So not only you're fighting the races, you're fighting a $1 billion industry who, you know, and that's a commodity. Everybody wants sugar. So, you know what I'm saying? Who's gonna, you know, that's a hard fight. You know what I'm saying? It's a hard fight, but the people just want to be self-governed. I think a lot of them want to be self-governed, but the thing is that if you keep them illiterate, and that there's a lot of illiteracy going down there because, you know, a lot of people didn't read, they had to be in the fields, they had to take care of their families. So education was something that's valued, you know what I'm saying? And people really don't know their rights and stuff like that because they've been always, you know, manipulated by other sources to make them do the slave wager jobs. If you want to add on to that, I want to keep, you know, doing all the talking. You know what I'm saying? But see, I had to like kind of educate Bhawin about this too. You know what I'm saying? But knowing that this is this land, and then all these football players came from there, and the reason why.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I would add is that one thing that was really powerful about being part of, you know, the process of making this film was getting again to build that relationship with Ira's family and the community. And then I think when you hear it being talked about by Alvin towards the end of the film, and then you hear that, you know, you hear Bridget tell you that their family is actually part, you know, indigenous, part Native American, you know, and that's part of their family lineage. And then I think how it kind of plays out in the film and what we talk about in the film is, and Ira touched on it a moment ago, is this idea of self-determination, you know, and I think that there is a way that community has been able to survive and thrive despite being kind of like, you know, starved of resources, you know, and I think that that's intentional. You know, I think that's an intentional thing that the US government has done since its inception is, you know, starve indigenous people, Black people, and all people who are not white of resources, but they found a way to survive. And I think part of how they found that way to survive is to build solidarity amongst each other and to build that connection and to also connect to the land and see the land as a part of not only their daily life and existence for like sustenance and for food and the fishing and all that, but also as a place of spirit and spirituality. And that was really critical for us to bring that element into the storytelling. And I think that was something that we took a lot of time to explore how that would play out visually and make sure that that was a part of the film that really, you know, complemented the storytelling about the football season and about the other aspects of the town. Because when you're in Pahokee, there's a real strong connection to the land and especially to the lake. And that goes back, that predates, you know, the Black population being there. That goes back to the Seminoles, that goes back to the indigenous people. And I think so many films that are talking about, you know, the present day kind of quote, you know, struggles of people of color, basically kind of see them as like, this just happened kind of naturally, and now they have to figure out how to get out of it, rather than talking about the structural elements that kept those people in those particular situations, but also not just the struggle of it, but the incredible love, joy, and beauty that comes out of people working together and building together. Like, I remember when I was, editing, it's like you're sort of revisiting all the footage that you've shot over 6 years at this point. And we're editing after the pandemic, right? So we're in the space where people are talking about mutual aid and caring for your neighbors and looking out for people. And, unfortunately, a lot of that, sort of like forgot and seemed to just go right back to business as usual now. But that element of what it means to be in community and be kind of thinking about mutual aid and connectivity as a people is playing out every day in Pahokee. It's in the cookouts. It's in the way that, Alvin loves on his football players. It's all those different elements kind of come together. And for me, that is where it's important for us to draw that connectivity between the way indigenous people kind of stewarded the land, took care of the land, but also saw the land as a place of spirit and not just a place to be exploited for money and for capital. So I think that's really an important part, because in that community, it's like, to me, I see Pahokee as a community of resistance, because they don't want to acquiesce to the rest of the society around them. They don't have an interest in that. It's not really about making money and getting rich. It's about how do you have a really strong, community, family unit, and love with each other. And Alvin says it in the film. That's what I love, that closing section of the film, because it really allows him the chance to bring that forward, because that's his real, philosophy. I mean, that's why he coaches football. It's not even about the game. It's about how do I build community with these young people and show them that they have everything they need within each other. So that's something we really try to convey. And I do think that that's how we kind of tied in those elements of that community being really strongly connected to the indigenous population.
Well, one of the things about the film, and I'm glad we're talking about the land, was given I think that agriculture and is probably not maybe the driving economic force now, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, even though sugar is really strong, that I'm curious, what is the economic driving force there now that would maybe help fund the school system and things that people will need? That's one part of the question. And then the other was, you had mentioned Harvest of Shame, that was associated with Edward R. Murrow and CBS. And I remember that. I mean, I was little, but I remember that was always trotted out to talk about poverty in the U.S. But when doing the research for this, talk to y'all, I found that that Edward R. Murrow, when he became in the National Security Council, he tried to have that film, not to have the BBC not show that film because it made the U.S. look bad, which was startling to me. Of course it does, but the startling that somebody would actually say that and try to basically suppress it from being shown outside the U.S. But actually, back to the economic driving force of the area. What do you know about that? What you could say about what's the industry that in the area now?
There is none other than sugar. We have, when I was back there has been some NFL players who have tried to come back and open up, like they just opened up a restaurant and they employ 60 people. But, the training, a lot of it has gone to training. And I feel like that's good, because everybody can't be NFL stars or football players, but there's a pushback. There's a pushback when you try to go and bring real resources where you're doing self-assistance. Me and Bhawin just tried to go down there and do a work study with the kids for during spring break, and we wanted to bring cameras and do like a basic, how to use the cameras and do these things. But the pushback and the stuff that we didn't get help from the city there. We didn't get help from a lot of resources that should have been. And we're like, oh, well, we have these filmmakers who's coming and they're bringing cameras to donate, but we're not giving them all we needed was the students to show up and have the parents' permission to come for 4 hours a day for 5 days so we can teach them some basic camera skills, and how to put together and develop these things. And I just see the pushback. And I a lot of that to me is like what Governor DeSantis is doing. with the education and all this stuff. They don't want this stuff there. They don't want them to be educated because they want these people to always be subservient to them. And it's sort of like, you give a man a fish to eat for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, he will eat forever. You know what I'm saying? So this is basically what we're trying to do, you know what I'm saying? And just fighting through those forces, you know what I'm saying? And we didn't have funding like that. We were using our own money to come down there to basically give this to them. And just the pushback that I got from being down there and just how people had to get used to us. It took them 2 or 3 years to get used to us just coming down there with the cameras because, they were always misrepresented when people come down there, like sort of like with the Harvest of Shame, you know what I'm saying? These people are like this, people like that. Everybody ain't like that. There is people out there that have education, and the ones that do have the education, a lot of them people that go to colleges and universities and they leave and they can't come back because just to put the government pushback, you know what I'm saying? You see it. It's like, okay, well, I'm not from here, so I'll speak out. You know what I'm saying? But they got some of the residents so scared to stand up for themselves that it's like going back to the 60s with the civil rights, where people like well, we ain't gonna vote because we're scared they're gonna push back. It's that same type of mentality that I'm seeing right now in Florida. And it doesn't help with the how things are going with DeSantis and what he's doing, with the education piece right there.
So sounds like you got no support from the state of Florida, from the public broadcasting down there, or foundations.
Well, they didn't really know. That right there, that to me should have been grassroots. You know what I'm saying? Like PBS had nothing to do with that. That was something we were trying to bring to our own. As me, as a resident and my family bloodline starting there, I wanted to give back. But I don't even donating his time, his cameras and stuff like that. Giving back to these people that we enjoyed that you put us on the map with this film, you know what I'm saying? But the thing is, what can we do to make it better for you? You know what I'm saying? We can show you the cause and the effect, and I was talking with this young lady about this earlier with a project she wants to do. But what is the solution? And if you try to come up with a solution, you get pushed back on it because they know, you know what I'm saying? They don't want these people to be educated. They don't want them to have self-will, you know what I'm saying, to learn these things because then they don't need them anymore. You understand what I'm saying? They could do it. And that's the thing. You got to learn that you could do this on your own, because you were doing it before, all this other entities came. There was more community back then, because people had to rely on each other. And now you're seeing the breaking down of the family system. And that's everywhere, though.
I noticed that, that there were, I didn't know about Pahokee before I saw the film. But I noticed that there were all these films set in Pahokee, and a lot of them were fascinated with the rabbits and the rabbit hunt. I think like maybe 2 or 3 films only about that. So, it's refreshing that your film is not, that's an element in the movie, but that's not what you're focusing on. Like this exotic thing about people eating rabbits and what, in their diet, and I guess, and also the gators and all that too. So, were you aware of all that? Of all these other movies before?
Of course, we did, but I'll let Bhawin speak on that. But yes, of course we were.
Okay.
Yeah. That's part of the research process, when you're making a film, is you want to kind of look at what other films have been made about that, the aspects of themes in your film, but also the actual, community in this particular case, which is such a unique place, and I'll say that I think that, most of the films, I'll say this, all the films that we know of that were made in Pahokee were made by white filmmakers who were coming in from the outside, kind of quote unquote gazing into this community, and definitely very focused on the poverty and violence and people who are getting out. And so I think that for us, Out of the Muck is a counter narrative to all those films, because it's not talking about getting out of this community. It's talking about all the incredible people who have stayed there and decided to hold it down and have maintained that legacy, that history, that culture, and are really proud of it and want to be there and don't want to leave. So I think when you're thinking about a film, and you're making one, you have to be really conscious about how are you representing a community that is actually going to be, sort of seeing this film, but this film is going to have a level of permanence, right? So it's like, we want people to watch this thing 10 years from now and be as proud as they would be watching it today. And, we did show it to the community several times. We had a big community screening that Ira organized back in 2021, and people loved the film. The biggest question was, when is it coming out? And then the second biggest question is, why are we not being taught this history that was explored in the film? But I think as two filmmakers of color, and also as Ira being Black himself and being from the community, that's a perspective that you can't just replicate that in making a film about a community like that. In my opinion, I think it's really important for, that kind of a space to be really held in a way that's super respectful of the people and actually in collaboration with the people there, so that there is a conversation about these ideas of how people are presented on film. And so, as Ira said, it took a couple of years. I mean, for us, the football team was easy access because there's so many people. Like when you go to the Muck Bowl, for example, you got helicopters, ESPN, like it's tons of people are filming. So the football team and the football was not hard to get access to filming that. But the deeper part of the story of Out of the Muck is not about football, but is about the family and about the community and about all those other kind of elements that I touched on earlier. And I think that part, we wanted to build a relationship with that part. And that, I think, we've seen other filmmakers who come to that town that basically, they almost like kind of are using the film as kind of like, like a carrot. It's like, oh, you can be we're going to make this film about this town. But then when they turn around and the film is released, it's really just perpetuating a lot of racist stereotypes. It's perpetuating it's hyper focused on the poverty. But when you actually decide that you're going to actually make a deep connection with a community and the people, you see all these other elements that are so beautiful that need to be foregrounded. I mean, we were intentional about foregrounding and highlighting the joy in the community, and we're highlighting the history and the incredible power that Alvin and Bridget have in that community as people that have been there. Like, Alvin could have been, as he said, living in LA, playing professional football in Canada, but he chose to come back and engage back with his community because he cares that deeply. Why are we not hearing those stories? Why are we only hearing about people that leave those towns? And then it's like, what does that also say about the town? And we brought it into the film in that scene with the couple who are talking about, one of them said they went away to college and they started watching media depictions of their own town that were about just the violence and all the different things, the horrible things that are happening. And she says, oh, wait a minute, that's not how I feel when I go back there. So I think it's really important for us to take this responsibility of showing this town and not just falling right back into the same tropes and the same ways that they're depicted by other filmmakers. And I think I really, want to shout out ITVS and specifically Shauna Swanson, who's our supervising producer, who herself is a Black woman from the South, who said, I've never seen a film like this that's highlighting only these positive things. I mean, we're bringing in the difficult elements. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't sugarcoating it, but our actual focus is on this incredibly powerful, self-determined family that wants to stay in Pahokee, not leave. They want to stay there because they love their community so much.
And that's also one of the things that, for me as a viewer, it was the resilience and the power that people had, and the comfortableness that they with themselves that came out in the film. And I think that so a lot of people in the rural South, I mean, it's not about just poverty and lack. It's people enjoying themselves. And thank you for presenting that, and just what people also felt, as a viewer, felt comfortable with you filming them, and they're just having a good time.
Yeah. And
with the cookouts and everything, and the football playing, they were proud of themselves.
Right. Well, it's funny. As Ira was saying, I work with young people, and so I just love being around kids. And like, if I'm around and I have a camera and they're interested, we show them the camera. Ira said we try to do a workshop and actually like bring a program down there, but we would bring extra cameras with us so we could give them out to the kids while we were filming, so that they could learn how to also use the cameras. And I think for me, I talk about this a lot with the idea of the camera for me is not a tool to gaze at people. People use that word gaze. For me, it's a tool of engagement and relationship building. And you see it like, I just love those moments where people are talking right to the camera or calling me by name and breaking that fourth wall, because I want people to know that this is a construction. Like, the film is edited and it's put together, but that there's real people, like, we're interacting. You know what I mean? Like, Ira's in front of the camera a lot. And it's just Ira being, I mean, the dance off, you know, I mean, that's just Ira being Ira, you know, it's like, we're trying to show you real life in a way that is authentic and not either sugar-coated or not trying to be like invisible. Like, we're not just filmmakers. Like, to be honest with you, there's times when I'm like, I don't want to film. I just want to sit and eat some ribs and have some, you know, some rabbit and chill out. You know what I mean? Because the food is so good. You know, so, but then I will be like, Bhawin, you got to get this. You got to get that. Pick the camera. Look at this good stuff that's going on. We should capture that. And I'll be like, oh man, I just want to like sit and have some fish, you know, because everything is about, you know, taking care of each other. And so even people will say, man, you've been filming for a long time. Put that thing down and have some, you know, make yourself a plate. Like you got to be a relationship with the people that you're making films with. It can't just be this thing where you're looking at them and you're kind of like objectifying them. You know, they're human beings, and like we got to really make sure that we're respectful of people's, you know, agency when they're in these films, and make sure that we're engaging with them. You know, even to the point where I would show them little edits and clips because I wanted people to understand what we were doing. Like we'll film for a whole week and then we'll show them like a little quick teaser of stuff we filmed so they understand the process of editing and the construction that's going on. And honestly, for us to be held accountable to that process as well, so that they know if they see something in the film that they don't agree with or like, that they actually have the capacity and the ability to say, hey guys, can we talk about this? You know, we don't really want to see that in there, or why are you doing that? So we can have a conversation. Now, it doesn't mean they get final edit or we're giving people like all these different, you know, elements of like, they're not going to be sitting in front of the camera editing, but we're in conversation with them. You know, it's a relationship. It's not just us making a film and putting them in front of the camera.
And I want to mention, because there were situations that we were in, and you know, it was like a mob scene in one, and you know, they had just filmed and won some, and people had let off some gun works, and everybody started running. It was one of the times me and Bhawin was first there, and I lost him for like an hour. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, damn, I hope, where's Bhawin at? So I'm running around looking for him. He's running around trying to come back, but he's being pushed further by the mob scene. And there's things like that we didn't show. There's things like the interaction when they came back from winning the championship and the police. There was a scene there with the police upon the sheriff's office, and we cut that out because we didn't want to make, because it wasn't about that. You know what I'm saying? It's just about showing the good and the natural, because these stuff, of course, this stuff is going to rise. But why are we showing that negativity? Because it wasn't anything negative. I mean, that was negative, but that's not what the film's about, and we don't want to give that preference.
I love the way you film people. I mean, I really distinctly remember this scene, the several scenes with Bridget and walking down the beach, and she's in slow motion. She's very regal, you know. And what was your discussion about that?
I mean, that, you know, that Bridget is like the queen. You know what I mean? Like Bridget is really like, you know, honestly, because she really holds that community down. I mean, the film is also, you know, centering like matriarchy, you know, and the women in that community who for generation after generation have held it down. And so, you know, when you're thinking about how you're going to actually film, you know, you can film from the sort of like top down level, like literally like top down, and make people sort of diminutive to the camera, or you can flip it and make them larger than life. And I think with Bridget, it's like Bridget is a larger than life character. I mean, she does things in that community that she doesn't even see as like a big deal, but we're like, oh my God, Bridget, you're incredible. Like there's so many stories about Bridget that we didn't even have the time to tell about how she used to take in women who were, you know, being victims of domestic violence and things like that. And they would come into her house and she let them stay there. As she says in the scene about the food and the cookout, that's her. You want to come and get a plate, you know, take another plate. Like, you know, people will just pull up and get some food. She's taking care of her family. So when we actually say, how do you show this person in a film? Yes, we're going to be showing her as if she is regal and she is somebody who is larger than life, because that's the truth. That's the reality of who she is. And when you're making a film, you actually get to make those kinds of choices, you know? And so for us, we really wanted to also, you know, you see a lot of things that are kind of like slowed down in slow motion. That to me is the rhythm of the town. Like when the football games are happening, it's like people are just like on it. Like everyone's excited, it's hype. There's like a lot of, you know, activity, like people are partying and all that. But when it's not football season, it's a chill, quiet place. And we wanted to have the film basically kind of try its best to replicate the rhythms of the community. And that takes, the thought of the cinema, how you're actually going to film things and the cinematography and the editing style. Yeah, and I appreciate there's some comments in the chat, and I do think that, films like Out of the Muck could be a blueprint for how you, have these, depictions in documentaries, because I think so many documentaries from the start of the actual form of documentaries have been used to kind of further like a really kind of white supremacist perspective of people of color, indigenous people. And it's in a way, it's uplifted that to the point of actually cementing that as the only way that those people can be seen and those communities can be actually perceived. And I believe that that does impact the real world and how people are kind of, treated in the real world. And so for us, we see Out of the Muck, and even the first film we did, The Throwaways, which is talking about, mass incarceration and trying to say like, these are, people, human beings. Like, why are we depicting people in these ways and not being thoughtful and careful and respectful of them? So I think it is important for us to kind of use this as a framework for how you can tell stories about communities, and honestly, how you build relationships before you even pick up the camera.
There's a question that I wanted to ask for a while, because Ira talked about it earlier in the conversation. It's about, well, what's going on in the community that prevents people, read it. What is it that the residents are afraid of to organize together to challenge a local government and their conditions?
It's miseducation. They don't have the education. It's like the same thing I'm saying about the civil rights. They have to be educated and to know that together in power, and that you can do a lot. But if you keep people separate and you keep them illiterate, they don't know that they have this power. So that's the thing of control. You know what I'm saying? To me, everything like with DeSantis, that's a control issue. He wants to control these masses and not let them get. So why would you not want to teach them about these things? Why would you not want to teach them about the Seminole Wars that happened in Florida and things like that? You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, yo, listen, and nobody like I said, people didn't even know about the Harvest of Shame. People didn't know about Zora Neale Hurston and the history of that. People didn't know about the hurricane of 1928. You know what I'm saying? And like some of the people did, and they're like, you know what? There's probably dead bodies still buried here. You know what I'm saying? You don't know. There's mass grave sites. So there's one with 672 bodies in West Palm Beach, and that's right before you get over the bridge where Trump is, or Mar-a-Lago. There's this big park where they dumped all these bodies, African Americans, and there's another one that we showed in Port Mayaka, where there's 200 bodies, and that's like 10 miles from Pahokee, and that's where the graveyard is for those people. And there's another great site, mass burials of African American bodies, of dark bodies in Seminoles. You know what I'm saying? And then you'll see, like when we researched it, you'll see that they have caskets for the white people, and they pushed all the people of color in mass graves. You know what I'm saying? And they made people pick up the bodies that survived. You know what I'm saying? So the stuff that you hear Zora Neale Hurston really happened. That really happened.
How far is where Eatonville and maybe where she was from Pahokee?
That's where, so Eatonville is like 100, maybe 160, 120. It's in Orlando.
Okay.
So from Orlando to West Palm Beach, or Orlando to Pahokee. So Eatonville is right outside of Orlando and Sanford and all that. So like what's his name?
Trayvon Martin was
Trayvon Martin got murdered and all that. That's around where Eatonville is.
Okay.
So that's the demographics. So it's like 100 miles.
So are there efforts to demand reparations for the things you're talking about that happened, with the mass graves and all the stuff that, the things that happened during the hurricane where people were not compensated?
I think my nephew said it the best. He's like, yo, listen, they keep pushing us. When they don't want us to show that warrior side. All we want you to do is to leave us alone and let us live. You know what I'm saying? Let us build our own little thing. You know what I'm saying? But it's sort of like what happened like in Tulsa and all that with the Black Wall Street. This is, it's the same kind of theme that you see in Pahokee and Belgrade and all these other towns. You know what I'm saying? They ain't gonna let you build your own wealth. You know what I'm saying? Because they want to use you for them to get wealth. And if they see you doing better, then they're gonna burn your stuff down, or sabotage it where you're not going to be as wealthy. You know what I'm saying? That's the process that you got to do. But if you have like say, hey, leave us alone and let us do our own thing, you know, then they get jealous of that, especially if your community starts thriving. You know what I'm saying? One of the things about Pahokee is that after they pushed them out and they didn't know how fertile that land was, and then they seen them. They seen them, then when they seen them, the crops that they were growing, those people were trying to come, they were gonna come back and get that land anyways by eminent domain. You know what I'm saying? But they had a natural disaster helped it push it along faster than what anything they could have ever done. You know what I'm saying? And they just showed you how instead of showing compassion, they didn't show any compassion to those people.
This is another question about the football, because football plays a very important role in the town. And you mentioned that quite a few people have gone into professional football. Is that still happening with the people who play football in Pahokee?
Sure. Yes. Like one of the, I don't know, I think it was one of the players, I don't know if he played for Michigan. No, he tried to play for Michigan, but I know he plays for one of the Florida teams now, I think. And they're still going. I mean,
Yeah.
you had what, like the ones I was there, Travis Benjamin, Calvin Benjamin, well, they're not playing anymore. So Janoris Jenkins. So like last year, there was a whole bunch of them in there. So I don't even know. I think there's a couple, but I don't know what teams they played for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There's a handful of players from that season who are currently playing at top D1 programs. You know, they're like, but just different, you know, they might be sophomores to seniors. Because, you know, if you look sort of with the timeline of that season and when, you know, when the film comes out, there's people that have gone through college already, but yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that for a lot of them, it's their opportunity to go to college, you know, and have college paid for, you know, and so, and that's a huge, you know, that's a huge advantage for people, you know, to have that, you know, that cost covered, because it's not cheap. So I think in a way, there's a very practical, you know, aspect to it, you know, that I think is really something that people overlook when they think about the hyper focus on football. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's not, people didn't choose for that to be the opportunity that exists there, you know, and as we've talked about throughout this conversation, you know, people want other opportunities, but if that's what you have right now, that's what people are going to do, you know, and you can't fault folks for trying to figure out a way to kind of, you know, make themselves kind of, you know, give themselves opportunities, you know, and so I think that is something that, but we were trying to talk about, you know, that's what we talked about when we were trying to bring some of these other ideas around, you know, media production and all these other aspects of the work that we do, is that that's something that people down there are very interested in as well. And as a matter of fact, some of the NFL players that have come back and have bought a restaurant in the town and are trying to kind of, you know, do some development projects. That's one of the things they want to do, is they want to have some kind of production facilities down there. So those are the conversations, you know, Ira's been involved in that a lot, you know, as I said, because, you know, he's got the strong connection to his own family and the community. But those are things that, you know, we'll continue to have those engagements with them, because it's something that we really, you know, we want to support if it's possible.
Someone from the Flawless Foundation posted saying that 60 NFL players have come from Pahokee, Belgrade. That's quite something.
Yeah, I want to send a shout out to that. The lady from the Flawless Foundation she emailed you, Bhawin, and she's doing some things in West Palm Beach right now too. I think his name is Janet. I've been having conversations for the last 2 days.
Nice.
And so she's coming up to where we're doing the Justice Film Festival in New York City on Friday. I'll be there. Bhawin has other engagement, but we're talking about it, and she's doing things in West Palm Beach.
Janine is in it. Yeah.
Yeah, Janine, okay.
So
yes,
Janine,
I did see that. Okay, yeah. I haven't had a chance to respond, but I saw that.
She's doing some positive stuff around mental health.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're working on things, and this is the type of partnerships that we want to work with, you know what I'm saying, that we're trying to do so that we can, you know, because it's easier if we all come together, you know, for a common goal than it is for each of us separately trying to fight something, you know, because we're finding a big machine, you know, this is a big machine, and they have, like, you know, they got money, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, these are people's lives that we're talking about, you know what I'm saying, and the quality of life. So this is things that we, you know, how do we make that better? Because you bring some stuff down there, and that's the thing that she's doing with a flawless foundation that affects your mental. You know what I'm saying? And then you see people going, and you know, it's just a lot of things that connect. A lot of things that connect with all these issues. You know what I'm saying? That we're trying to, you know, and this is a big push. I mean, this is a big thing that we had this national documentary with the help from Black Public Media and all these other people, and this stuff that you guys are doing to bring these things out. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, this is how that we can get the word out. You know what I'm saying? Because it's got to be through grassroots. You know, we don't have the big money. You know what I'm saying, that we can. But we can do grassroots work. We can come together.
Is there on your website or related website? There's something that people who are watching who can contribute and support the work that you're doing and folks are doing in the area that we can put in the chat or anything.
Well,
we haven't set anything up on the website, but that's something we've talked about, because again, Ira's really continuing the work. I mean, he hasn't stopped, you know, and I think for me, it's a little bit of a shift because I have a whole organization that I'm running here. But for Ira, I mean, that's his full commitment is doing that work. So I think, you know, I mean, Ira, maybe you can drop your email in the chat, or Elizabeth, you can feel free to share our emails with folks if they want to reach out. You know, just one thing I wanted to touch on, because I was, you know, you were talking about this other organization working with football players and mental health and things like that. And I think like that's one of the things I love about the film is, you know, it's talking about sports as a space for young people to connect with each other, but also to get cared for, like feel care and love from the people that they're, you know, who are, you know, the coaches and people who are kind of like in charge and who are responsible for them. And I think that's one thing that's so beautiful about Alvin. You know, it's like being around him. He has such a deep care and love for the players, and they know it's real. It's not just him saying the words, you know, because you'll see him take time to make connections with all the different, you know, family members and parents, and he keeps up with them, and they all keep up with him when they come back to town. Because, you know, you see the Muck Bowl, a lot of the alums will come back, players who have gone on to college or just don't live in Pahokee anymore, they come back. And I think that's one of the things that I think is so important for us to think about, because so many people say negative things about football in that context of like, well, it's a violent sport and all these things are, you know, it's a negative thing. Why are you only promoting football? When they, you know, people have said that sometimes about the film. And I think for me, it's like to be able to see beyond that, while I agree with that, and I think Alvin and I had some really good conversations about it, it's also a place of belonging. You know, it's also a place of people learning how to kind of be together with other people and build something together, you know, and work for a common goal. And I think at the end of the day, it's about a place where you feel loved and cared for. Because those players, it's like they don't want to leave practice. Like they'll practice, they'll be there till 9 o'clock, and Alvin will be there till 9. You know, and it's dark out. You can't even see the, you know, because they're turning the lights on. Like, guys, you got to go home. You know, but it's a place to belong, and I think that's the thing that's really powerful about, you know, sports in general. And that's one of the things we really wanted to foreground in the storytelling is, you know, we're showing you a football team, but we're not hyping up the football aspect necessarily. We're hyping up how much, you know, love and community there is within the context of football in that particular community, in that town.
Well, thank you for Bhawin for the update about Alvin, because I was going to ask about that, but I'm going to ask you an update about Bridget and how she's doing. And, you know, when the film ends, she got her nursing degree, which I think people all celebrate with her. So what's update?
Well, she's still working on that. She's still working on the nursing degree. There's a lot of elements that Florida puts you through.
Yeah, her licensing now, she's working on that stage.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of stuff that they put you through, you know, and some of the stuff that's happened to her in the past, you know, has been a sort of a roadblock where she's got to get like it, you know, expunged and all this other stuff, you know, and it's crazy because it's like, wait a minute, you let her into the program, you let her graduate, and now you won't let her work. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's things like that that's going on, but she did complete what she said she was going to do. She does have that degree. So in the PBS part, you don't see it, but I think, what did you give them the festival one for?
Yeah, so we actually, I haven't gotten any. I have to actually reach out to him. because I do want him to get the festival version. And that is going to get added, Ira, to the, they're going to switch the streaming version. So in the version that's currently on PBS, you don't see the script. There's a postscript in the film that informs the audience members that Bridget completed her degree. So you might have watched the festival version. Which
Yeah,
has
you
that
sent me that.
postscript in it.
Yeah,
exactly. I sent you that link. And the thing that's really, we just had, Ira talks to Bridget all the time, and Bridget, Alvin, and Bridget, Ira, and I had a great conversation the night before the premiere on PBS, and she's just so thrilled that the film is out there and that the story of their family is out there, because she has so much pride, and she wants people to know about that and feel the same amount of pride for Pahokee. And I think that she's someone that cares so deeply about that town that she wants the film to have that kind of activate that in people in the town. So I know she's been talking to you, Ira, since it came out, and people are coming up to her and telling her, they see her on TV.
Feedback I got from people who have left. Like I got this guy who lives in Boston now, but he remembers like being there in the 60s and 70s. And he said, I left there in 1970, and he's an older gentleman, he's older than me. He says, but thank you, because this is what I remember. And he's like, they get $9 for the rabbit. Back in the 60s, 70s, we're only getting like quarter to 50 cents for a rabbit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But times is harder now. You know what I'm saying? So he's like, he's like, man, I can't believe they're getting that much for a rabbit now. And I'm like, yeah, well, times change. And a quarter probably went a little longer back then. You know what I'm saying? You catch 4 rabbits, that's $1. You know what I'm saying? That money would have lasted a little longer, than back in the 60s than it is here, like 50 years later. So it comes with the time, but they're still doing it. I've seen, when I researched, I've seen a picture of this kid. He had on no shoes, and the picture was taken like in the 1940s. And he's coming from the rabbit field with a string full of rabbits, and just as happy, And he looked like one of our gangs. You remember our gang, Little Rascals? He looked like one of those Little Rascal characters. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? So this is what they've been doing for decades. Decades.
What there was someone who put something in the Q&A and asked, what if Northern and Western colleges sent recruiters there to recruit future scientists and writers from Pahokee to counter the white supremacy of Florida?
That'd be great. There was one guy, and this is crazy. So there was an interview of this young boy, and he came from Pahokee, and he got to interview Obama. So and this kid would have been amazing. He just happened to pass away not too long ago. You know what I'm saying? But it's just giving these people the opportunity, because you never know what you're gonna have there. Yeah, my roots is from there. I'm a filmmaker. I'm not no pro football player. I might have played pro football if I was stuck there. You know what I'm saying? To see my way out. But God's seen other things for me. I had my own trials and tribulations I had to go through, but I still wanted to tell this story because I know what the roots were. And then when I was doing the throwaways, all this stuff kept popping up. So it was like, to me, it was like God gave me this, and I'm like, wait a minute. I remember that's. And then they said it was the Harvest of Shame I was watching. It popped up, just me doing the research. I'm homeless. I'm at the state library up here. I thank God for the resources that was there. And I'm there and I'm just researching stuff, working on the throwaways, and the other stuff came out about Out of the Muck. And see, that's one of the things, because we were finishing the throwaways and I pitched Out of the Muck. So Bhawin was like, man, we ain't even done with this one yet. But I'm like, this story is an even better story. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's how filmmakers are, right?
Yeah, we're at NYU talking to Sam Power. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen. He's like, don't say nothing to him about it. And me, you tell me not to do something, I'm gonna do it. I just wanted to hear what he was gonna say. And Sam was like, well, that's a great story. And so, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, see, I want to say see Bhawin, you know what I'm saying? But we weren't even done with the throwaways. And I get what he says, because come on, that one took 5 years, this one took 7 years. That's 12 years out of our lives on 2 films, and we had to struggle to get it. Hopefully the next one is easier, because you asked, and I want to end my part with this, because the next one it's a trilogy. So it's Throwaways that, Throwaways Out of the Muck. And then the next one is called Tale of Two Journeys, which talks about the Underground Railroad in Central and Western New York. Because where I'm from, Alex Haley was born, that's Ithaca, New York. Then you go 30 miles up, it's Harriet Tubman in Auburn. 30 more miles is Frederick Douglass in Rochester. Come back down 20 miles of Seneca Falls in the women's movement. And then another 20 miles, 30 miles is Mark Twain. And all that's part of the Underground Railroad. So there was two exoduses of Southern African Americans from the South to these parts. And another one occurred during the Jim Crow. And that's how my family came up during the Harvest of Shame. So we want to tell those stories. And there's people there that still have roots.
Thanks, Ira. I was gonna ask about what was the next thing, but I thought you're still working on this. But you getting ready to jump off to the next thing. So thank you for that, and we'll be looking for that in a few years. All right. Okay. Is there anything else y'all want to say? Because we're just about at time. We're at time. Actually, the hour went by real fast.
Yeah, well, I just dropped in the chat some ways that people can stay in touch through social media, our website. You can learn more about Youth FX if you're interested in that. And also I saw there was a couple of international folks. You know, we'd love to screen the film internationally. We actually haven't screened it in many places internationally, but I think there's been a lot of interest. So please, reach out to us, like I said, through our website. Elizabeth's going to share the emails with all the attendees as well so they can stay in touch. And yeah, just thanks for the opportunity. It's always good to have a conversation about the film, so appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Bhawin. Thank you, Ira.
Yeah.
And
I enjoyed it. It did go by like that. So.
yeah.
Always does.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, so much for this very rich conversation about your important and beautiful film, Out of the Muck. Anybody who hasn't watched it yet, please do take the time to watch it. Our next African Diaspora Film Club will be discussing the documentary Can You Bring It? Bill T. Jones and D-Man in the Waters, and that will be on Sunday, April 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific. And Cornelius will be in conversation with co-directors Rosalind LeBlanc and Tom Hurwitz. And we're putting in the chat where you can register for that. And you can always find out about our programs on our website, moadsf.org. We would love to get your feedback about today's program. So if you could click on the link to the online survey, and it just takes a few minutes, and we would love to hear back from you. It's very helpful for us in knowing what you enjoyed about the program and also what you would like to see in the future. And of course, if you like what we do and you want to support MoAD, we would love to have you as members, or if you want to make a donation of any amount, you can donate on the website, or you can text a donation to 56512, type the word MoAD SF and follow the link to donate. And I definitely want to thank Black Public Media again for co-sponsoring the African Diaspora Film Club. We love working with you. So thank you all for being with us tonight.
Will this be rebroadcast? Is there going to be a link? Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna we'll have a recording of it and I'll send you the link for it.
Okay, so I can sign off now?
Yep, you can. Have a good night.
All right, good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Good night.